Usually when clients come to my office, one of the things that I tell them is it's amazing that they were able to get through life without coming to therapy before then. And I believe that because most of us are not taught a theory of emotions. Emotions are so important to navigating the world and our lives, yet we don't teach children anything about this in school. And so we wander around life without any roadmap. Well, one of the things that we've learned from Paul Ekman, who is someone who's studied emotions in detail and in depth, is that there are 5 core emotions. And from these 5 core emotions, there are more emotions. So there's nuances in each one of these categories. Now, you could probably guess what these 5 emotions are. There are emotions that have to do with happiness, and we actually call those enjoyment, that have to do with anger. We call those anger, with disgust, with sadness, and the last one is fear. So within each of those categories, there are other smaller categories, and he's ranked them from kind of the least intense to the most intense in each of those categories. And you can actually study them and you can learn them, and then you can learn how to better name your emotions. And you can also teach your children how to do that. Now, what emotions are actually composed of, and if you want to learn how to talk about them with your children, are a triggering event, and then what your personal experience is to that event, which is often in your body, and then your reaction. So those are the 3 components. We can teach our kids and we can teach ourselves how to recognize those pieces when we slow down and we become more mindful. Ultimately, the goal of learning a theory of emotions and learning more about our emotions is to interact more wisely with the world and make better choices at the end. So making better choices in how we're reacting. So everyone feels anger, but most of the time what we're doing is we're just reacting to what's happening and how we're feeling without really having much awareness. And if we're reacting without choosing how to react, then we're kind of making a mess for ourselves and making a mess for everybody else. So having a theory of emotions and how to deal with emotions and teaching that to our children can really, really help. There's some key points, and you can see this in the outline of the document that this video is embedded within. There's some key things that can really help you when you're thinking about emotions, and how we think about emotions can also really help. One of the main things is that emotions are not good or bad. There may be some that are more difficult than others, and traditionally we think of those as anxiety, anger, sadness. Those are ones that are more difficult for us to have. If we think of them as bad rather than difficult, then we're more likely to try to get rid of them, or to be ashamed of them, or to judge ourselves when we have them. And that's really not good. Judging ourselves when we have emotions makes it much more complicated to cope with them. So dealing with our emotions in a non-judgmental way, and understanding that emotions are going to come up, and the difficult ones are ones that everyone has. Like, everyone in the world deals with anger. It's not something that's just unique to you. I think when we have difficult emotions, we tend to feel different from the people around us, and we tend to feel isolated. And understanding that it's a human experience to have those emotions can make things much easier for us. Another way to think about emotions that can make the whole experience of difficult emotions easier for us to deal with is to understand that I like to think of it as kind of like a weather analogy. So when the conditions outside are, when there's certain environmental conditions outside, I'm not a weather person, but I'm not a biologist, but that produce rain, then it's going to come from the sky. And I think it's really the same with something like anger. Like, if you have had a difficult morning, let's say the night before you didn't sleep very well, and you get in the car and there's a lot of traffic and you're late for work, and you sit down in your cubicle and you're particularly sensitive to one of your coworkers who continuously interrupts you. And on this morning, which has been kind of a crappy morning for you, your coworker interrupts you once again, then anger is going to arise in you. So all of those causes and conditions are right for anger to arise. And so just understanding that anger is something that's going to arise, it's not something to judge yourself for, it's not something that you're bad for. Having that kind of an attitude towards anger can really, really help you with making a good choice with that anger. You know, being aware of the events that triggered your anger, being understanding of what that anger feels like in your body. Being aware of those initial components can help you to make a better choice at the end. So understanding that emotions are composed of a trigger and the experience that happens in your body, those two pieces at the beginning of what ultimately results in the reaction, and becoming familiar with that is what we want to do for ourselves and what we want to do for our children.